Can you pretend to be my boyfriend for a day?" The words slipped out before Ava Mitchell could stop herself. Her voice trembled, part panic, part disbelief that she'd just said that to a complete stranger. Ethan Walker looked up from beneath the hood of a classic Mustang, his hands streaked with grease, a smudge of engine dust across his cheek. For a second he thought he'd misheard her. Then he caught the desperation in her eyes, a mix of exhaustion, fear, and something else. It was a grey Thursday afternoon at Walker's Auto Repair, a small garage tucked between an old bakery and a thrift shop on Maple Avenue. Outside, autumn leaves swirled in the cold wind. Ava stood by the open door, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "I'm sorry," she stammered, cheeks flushing.
"That sounded insane. You probably think I'm desperate?"
Ethan said, his tone calm but amused. "You're not wrong. But maybe start with why." Ava took a shaky breath. "There's a family gathering tomorrow. Big one.
My sister's getting engaged and I might have told them I have a boyfriend. A great one."
Smart, kind, successful, she winced. "The problem is, he doesn't exist." Ethan wiped his hands with a rag, studying her with a mix of curiosity and sympathy. "So you walked into a garage and picked the first guy covered in oil?" Her laugh was nervous but real.
"You looked..."
"Dependable," he raised an eyebrow.
"That's one word for it." "I'm serious," she said quickly, her voice cracking.
"My family, they think I'm failing at life because I sell flowers. They compare me to my cousin Vanessa, the lawyer with the perfect fiancé and the perfect life."
I couldn't stand another round of pitying looks." For a moment, Ethan didn't say anything.
He simply leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms. The soft hum of a radio filled the silence.
"An old country song playing faintly, he finally said.
Most people would have hired an actor or faked a breakup. "I don't have time," Ava murmured. "And I can't afford someone fake.
I just need..."
Someone kind enough to play along." For one day, Ethan's expression softened. He saw honesty in her eyes, an exhaustion too deep to fake. "All right," he said slowly.
"Let's say I agree."
"What's in it for me?" Ava blinked.
I can pay you."
"I don't have much, but..." He shook his head, a faint smile forming. "I don't need your money. Bring flowers to my grandmother this weekend. She loves lilies."
"And maybe..."
His gaze met hers. "Stop apologizing for being human." Ava stared at him, speechless. He reached for his jacket, slinging it over his shoulder. "One day, right? Tomorrow at 1? She nodded, still trying to process what just happened. As she turned to leave, Ethan called after her, voice steady but warm. "Don't worry."
"Ava, I'll make sure your family believes every word of your story." Outside,
the wind carried the faint scent of motor oil and lilies, and the first spark of something neither of them could name. Morning sunlight filtered through the front window of petal and pine, dusting the rows of fresh roses, tulips, and daisies with a golden glow. Ava Mitchell adjusted a bouquet of peonies, her fingers deft and gentle. The tiny bell above the door jingled as customers came and went, their laughter soft, their lives busy. Ava smiled, the kind of small, polite smile she'd mastered over years. The smile that said, "I'm fine," even when she wasn't. Her boss, Mrs. Danner, an older woman with a warm heart and sharper tongue, glanced over from the counter. "Big weekend, huh? I heard your family's gathering again. You ready for the usual interrogation?" Ava chuckled dryly. "Ready as I'll ever be. I'm sure my cousin Vanessa will have a slideshow of her new apartment and her fiancé's medical degree." Mrs. Danner smirked. "And you'll bring flowers that are prettier than her dress." "That's something," Ava smiled faintly but didn't answer. Deep down, she knew that the family dinners always left her hollow, a mix of pity and judgment disguised as love. They didn't see the poetry in what she did. They saw failure in a girl who never aimed high enough. That night, after closing the shop, she sat at the counter, surrounded by unsold blooms, scrolling through messages from her mother. "Don't forget to bring your boyfriend Ava. Grandma's dying to meet him. Vanessa says her fiancé is flying in early. It'll be such a perfect weekend." Ava sighed. pressing her forehead against her hand. One small lie, a fake boyfriend to stop the endless lectures, had turned into a storm she couldn't control. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan Walker was closing the garage for the night. He wiped his hands on a rag, staring at the empty space around him. The old neon sign outside flickered faintly. Walker's Auto Repair. Since 1987, he ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion etched into his features. Most days he worked alone, fixing cars by choice. He liked the quiet. Machines didn't lie, and broken things could always be repaired if you took the time. But beneath his calm exterior lay something heavier. He'd inherited the garage after his father passed away, and quietly expanded it into a network of shops under other names. But he never told anyone. Money and status meant nothing if it couldn't fix what was broken inside. He opened his wallet, glancing at a faded photo of his grandmother, Eleanor, holding a bouquet of lilies, the same kind of flowers that Ava sold every day. "Still miss you, old lady," he murmured. "Guess I'll bring you some this weekend." 2 lives, one surrounded by flowers, the other by steel, unknowingly moved toward each other. The next afternoon, when Ava stepped into that small garage and blurted out her desperate request, neither of them knew it wasn't the beginning of a lie. It was the beginning of something that might finally make them both feel real. Ethan showed up at 1:30 sharp, just like he'd promised. His truck gleamed under the soft afternoon sun, freshly washed, smelling faintly of engine oil and pine. Ava stood outside her apartment, clutching her purse like a lifeline, her heart pounding in her throat. He stepped out of the truck wearing a simple blue button-down shirt, the sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows. Somehow he looked both rugged and impossibly put together. "You're early," Ava said, trying to sound composed. "You said 1:30, he replied with a faint smile. "I'm not big on being late. Makes people nervous," Ava laughed, a little too fast. "You're already making me nervous." He opened the passenger door for her. "Then I'm doing something right." As the truck rolled out of the city, the silence between them was surprisingly easy. Calm, not awkward. The golden trees along the highway blurred by as Ava exhaled softly. "So," Ethan said, glancing at her, "if I'm going to convince your family I'm the guy of your dreams, I should at least know how we met." Ava bit her lip, thinking. "At the flower shop. You came in looking for lilies, remember?" "For your grandmother," he nodded. "And you gave me a discount because you thought I looked like I couldn't afford it." Ava gasped, mock offended. "I would never assume that." Ethan grinned, the corners of his eyes softening. "Relax, I'm kidding. Mostly." They kept building their story. First date at a small cafe, favorite song being Stand By Me, a mutual love for coffee that smelled like burnt hope. Somewhere between the laughter and shared glances, the edges of make-believe began to blur. "So why flowers?" Ethan asked suddenly. "You ever think of doing something else?" Ava stared out the window, watching the fields pass by. "Everyone in my family did. But flowers make sense to me. They don't last long, but they make people happy while they do." "I guess I like that kind of honesty." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then you're not failing, Ava. You're just doing something most people don't have the guts to do. Something real." She turned toward him, startled by his tone. There was no pity in his voice, only quiet respect. When they finally turned onto the long driveway of her grandmother's house, Ava felt her pulse racing again. The Mitchell estate looked exactly as she remembered, elegant, intimidating, full of memories that both comforted and suffocated her. Ethan parked the truck and turned off the engine. "Ready?" She gave a nervous laugh. "Not even close." He leaned closer, his voice steady but kind. "Then we'll fake it together." Ava took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was about to perform a lie. She felt like she was walking into something she might actually believe in. As they stepped out of the truck, the wind carried the faint scent of lilies from the bouquet she held, a reminder of the promise Ethan had made. The Mitchell family gatherings were legendary, not for their warmth, but for their quiet competition. The house was alive with polished laughter, designer perfumes, and the clinking of wine glasses. As soon as Ava and Ethan stepped through the door, a dozen curious eyes turned their way. "Sweetheart!" her mother Margaret exclaimed, half in shock, half in delight.
"You made it! And this must be—"
"Ethan Walker," he said, offering his hand with an easy smile.
"Thank you for having me." Even his handshake was confident, firm but not arrogant.
The older women in the room exchanged approving looks while the younger cousins whispered. Vanessa Carter, tall and sleek in her navy dress, appeared from the dining room, her smile perfectly measured. "Well, well, so the mystery boyfriend exists after all," Ava forced a laugh. "Told you he wasn't imaginary." Vanessa's fiancé, Ryan Brooks, raised an eyebrow. "What do you do, Ethan?" Before Ava could intervene, Ethan said casually, "I work with cars." The silence was brief but sharp. Vanessa tilted her head, that subtle smirk never leaving her lips.
"Cars? How practical." Ava's face burned.
She opened her mouth to change the subject, but Ethan spoke first, calm, unbothered.
"It's not glamorous," he said, "but I like fixing things."
"Especially when they're worth fixing." The words hung in the air like quiet thunder. Vanessa blinked, unsure how to respond. Grandma Eleanor suddenly chuckled from her seat at the head of the table. "Character matters more than resumes," she said warmly. "That's what I've always believed." Ava glanced at Ethan, gratitude shimmering behind her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small at this table. Dinner unfolded with surprising ease. Ethan was charming, but never overbearing. He helped serve food, complimented the cook, and made her nephews laugh by pretending to juggle dinner rolls. When Ava excused herself to the kitchen, her mother followed, eyes wide with wonder. "Where on earth did you find him?" Margaret whispered. "He's wonderful." Ava smiled faintly. "Just got lucky, I guess, from the dining room." They could hear Ethan's voice, low, steady, telling Eleanor about his grandmother and how she'd taught him that kindness was a form of courage. When Ava returned to the table, she found him passing a plate of dessert to Vanessa with that same gentle smile. The hostility in the air had vanished, replaced by something quieter. Respect. Perhaps even admiration. After dessert, when everyone moved to the living room, Ethan caught Ava's hand briefly under the table. It was subtle, fleeting, but enough. "Breathe," he murmured. "You did great." She almost laughed.
"I didn't do anything." He looked at her, eyes soft. "You showed up."
Sometimes that's enough. Ava had no idea how or why, but in that moment the lie she'd told didn't feel like a lie anymore. It felt like the first real thing in her life in a long, long time. The night had grown quiet. Crickets hummed somewhere beyond the hedge as fairy lights shimmered above the Mitchells' garden. Laughter drifted faintly from inside, but out here, under the cool September air, it was just Ava and Ethan. "Thank you," Ava said softly, her hands wrapped around a mug of cocoa. "For all of that. You didn't have to be that perfect in there." Ethan leaned against the railing, smiling faintly. "That wasn't me being perfect. That was me being polite." She laughed, a quiet, genuine sound that melted into the night. "Well, whatever it was, you saved me from another year of humiliation. My mom will probably build a shrine in your honor," he chuckled. "As long as it comes with cookies, I'm fine with that." They fell into an easy silence, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. The string lights reflected in his eyes, softening the lines on his face. Then Ethan's voice dropped, lower, steadier. "There's something I need to tell you, Ava." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" He hesitated for a beat, then said simply, "I wasn't completely honest with you." She stiffened slightly.
"About what?"
"The garage," he said.
"It's mine." Ava blinked, confused.
"You own Thompson's Auto Repair?" He nodded. "And 16 others like it, across 3 states. Walker Auto Group." Her lips parted, but no sound came out.
"You're—"
"The CEO?"
"I guess that's what they call me." he said, rubbing the back of his neck.
But I prefer fixing things myself.
Keeps me grounded. Ava stared at him, still processing.
Why didn't you just say that from the start? Because when people find out, they start treating me differently, Ethan said quietly. Suddenly every conversation turns into networking or flattery or pity. You were the first person in a long time who looked at me and didn't see a title. Just a guy trying to help. Ava felt her chest tighten.
I wasn't pretending to be kind. I know. His gaze met hers, calm, unwavering.
That's why I said yes. The wind brushed against her hair, carrying the faint scent of the lilies she'd brought for her grandmother earlier that day. She wanted to be angry that he hadn't told her sooner, but she couldn't. He'd given her honesty now, freely, without pride or expectation. So,
all this time, you were the one helping me, she murmured.
But you're the one who doesn't want to be seen for who you really are. He smiled ruefully. Guess we're both a little afraid of being judged. Ava looked at him for a long moment, her voice barely a whisper. You know what's funny?
I thought I needed a fake boyfriend to feel seen.
Turns out I just needed to stop pretending I wasn't worth being loved. Ethan's eyes softened, a quiet understanding passing between them. Neither of them said another word. They didn't have to. The silence spoke enough for both. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows of petal and pine, washing the little flower shop in shades of gold and green. Ava was restocking roses, her mind replaying the previous night over and over again. She had hardly slept. Ethan's words. You were the first person who looked at me and didn't see a title, still echoed in her head. She was lost in thought when the bell above the door chimed. Ethan stood there, holding a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a bouquet of lilies in the other. Morning, he said softly. Ava froze for a heartbeat, then forced a smile. If this is a follow-up to the best performance of my life, I'm not sure I can top it. He laughed, a low, genuine sound. No performance this time. Setting the lilies on the counter, he looked around the shop. So this is your world?
Smells better than motor oil. Barely, she teased, but her voice softened.
What are you doing here, Ethan? He met her gaze, serious now.
Yesterday was supposed to be fake.
Just one day. But somewhere between your grandmother's smile and the way you defended me from Vanessa's sarcasm, it stopped feeling fake. Ava's breath caught. Ethan, he stepped closer, his tone gentle but steady. I know this started as something ridiculous, a lie to protect your pride.
But I don't want it to end like one.
I like you, Ava, the real you. The one who talks too much when she's nervous and names every flower like it's her best friend. Ava blinked fast, trying to keep her composure. You realize how crazy this sounds, right? We met 2 days ago. You've seen me cry, panic, and almost trip over my own lie. And I still showed up today, he said simply. Because for the first time in a long while, I actually want to. Her laughter broke through the tension, shaky but full of relief. You're impossible. I get that a lot. Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her arrange the lilies he brought. You know, he said after a pause, maybe we could try this and for real.
No pretending.
No rules. Ava looked up at him, her hands trembling just slightly. Fair warning, she said with a soft grin. My family's probably planning our wedding as we speak. He chuckled. Let them. We'll move at our own pace. For a long moment neither spoke. The air between them felt charged, not with nerves, but with something calm, certain, almost peaceful. When he finally reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, Ava didn't flinch. She just looked up, eyes shimmering in the morning light. Thank you, she whispered, for saying yes to something this crazy. He smiled. Best yes I've ever given. Outside, the first breeze of autumn carried the scent of lilies through the open door, the same flowers that had started it all. But this time, they weren't part of a story Ava had made up. This time, they were real. 6 months later, the shop looked different, brighter, fuller, alive in a way it had never been before. Ava stood by the front counter, rearranging a display of tulips when she heard laughter from the street. Ethan was outside, kneeling beside a young boy, showing him how to check the tire pressure on a bike. His hands were still as steady as ever, but there was something lighter about him now, as if the quiet weight he'd always carried had finally lifted. When he stepped inside, wiping grease from his palms, she teased,
"You're supposed to be the CEO of 17 garages, not a bicycle mechanic," he grinned.
"Technically, it's 18 now, and that kid's dad works at one of them. Training programs, remember? Gotta start small." Ava shook her head, smiling. "You're impossible." Still the best compliment I've ever gotten. Their relationship had settled into a rhythm. Early mornings, shared lunches, late-night talks that drifted between laughter and silence. They'd learned each other's edges, and somehow everything fit. Ava still worked at Petal and Pine, refusing Ethan's offer to buy the place for her.
"It's not about owning it," she told him once.
"It's about earning the joy it gives me." And Ethan had understood. That was what he loved most about her. She didn't want more. She wanted meaning. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the last customer left, Ethan locked the shop door behind him. "Close early," he said softly.
"I have something for you," Ava turned, curious. "Ethan, if this is about dinner," and he shook his head.
Then knelt down right where he stood, between the hydrangeas and the lilies. Surrounded by the soft scent of spring, Ava froze, her hand flying to her mouth.
"Ethan!"
He pulled a small box from his jacket, his voice low but certain. "You once asked me to pretend, and I did. But everything that came after, the laughter, the fights, the late-night coffee, the way you look at the world, and none of that was fake." Her eyes filled with tears. He opened the box, revealing a delicate silver ring shaped like a blooming lily. "You taught me that pretending sometimes leads us to what's real. So, Ava Mitchell, will you be my real forever?" Ava's throat tightened as the words she wanted to say tangled in her chest. She could only nod, whispering through a smile. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, and for a long moment they just stood there, surrounded by the fragrance of flowers and the faint hum of the evening city. Outside, the neon sign flickered softly, casting a warm glow across the window where two silhouettes leaned close.
Laughter echoing faintly into the night, Ava looked up at him,
whispering the same words she had thought that first day. All I had to do was walk through the door. And this time, it wasn't a plea for help. It was gratitude, because she had walked into love and love had walked right back to her.